look at the international security discourse since 2001, one of the issues which is receiving increased attention is the concept of biosecurity. Two factors in particular have sort of driven and led to the increase in attention in biosecurity. Firstly, you have the events of September the 11th, but also after that there was the anthrax letter attacks in the US, in which 5 people, including 2 US senators, were killed. This has led to a reconceptualization of biosecurity from what was traditionally a term associated with veterinary livestock security and the prevention of spread of diseases in livestock, to biosecurity as conceptualized and seen through the lens of bioterrorism. The focus, the bioterrorism focus is not without substance. You have, in addition to the anthrax letter attacks, the earlier attempted bioterrorism activities of the Aum Shinrikyo group in Japan in the early to mid-1990s. You also have events when the Rajneeshis attempted to use salmonella to a food poisoning attack in the US as well, even earlier. So there is logic to actually having this biosecurity focus, which is framed through the lens of bioterrorism. Yet at the same time, bioterrorism is not the only or the exclusive problem or challenge generated from the advances in the life science in the 21st century. I think 2 factors are important. Firstly, you have a push process whereby advances in life sciences and biotechnology generate new capabilities which could increase the utility of biological weapons for use in war. In addition to this, there is a pull process whereby the re-equipping of military forces for 21st century conflicts may sort of draw in some of these new technologies which are being developed. So you have both a push and a pull process which could lead to the assimilation of biological weapons and life sciences and biotechnology within military arsenals for the purposes of the strategic use of biology in warfare. Okay. And if you look at some of the cases whereby you have insurgencies, or you have peacekeeping operations, or the sort of new conflicts which characterize the 21st century, you could see how there may be temptation, and the incentives to include biological weapons could increase. In response to this challenge posed by biology and life sciences in the 21st century, it's recognised that there is a need for a range of measures operating at a range of levels, from the individual to the international. Some people use the term governance, others web of prevention. What matters is the fact that you have a multifaceted collection of measures operating at different levels. Such elements could include export controls, disease detection, prevention, effective intelligence, biosecurity and biosafety, international and national prohibitions, and then there are other elements such as education and codes of conduct which are also important. The idea is all these measures combine to form what is probably best understood as a web of prevention of the misuse of life sciences. Education is a particularly interesting area. In 2005, the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention held 2 meetings in which they looked at the role of a code of conduct for scientists and how this could contribute to raising awareness of the convention. In 2008, there was 2 meetings devoted to biosecurity, but also the role of education, amongst other things, in trying to support the objectives of the convention. My own research, in addition to my PhD, has involved working with colleagues here at Bradford, but also in Italy, to look at biosecurity education, specifically in Europe. Along with colleagues at the Landau Network Centre of Volta in Italy, we began a study of life science courses in Europe to try and identify or detect any references to biosecurity to the concept of dual use, by which I mean the means by which a scientific research can be used for good purposes but also malign purposes. We also looked for traces of codes of conduct or references to arms control within life science education courses at a master's and undergraduate level. We developed a sample which was comprised of 144 courses from 57 universities in 29 countries, speaking more than 25 different languages, and actually conducted an online survey of the available material on these courses to try and identify elements which would feed into this sort of biosecurity education concept. The survey found there is actually very limited biosecurity education provision across Europe. We identified 7 out of 144 degree courses in 3 universities which offered some form of dedicated biosecurity module. There were other references to biosecurity or to arms control or to dual use, but often there wasn't much substance to these references. The other alternative is you find some courses dealing with biosecurity, but dealing with it from a scientific perspective in which they look at agents which might be particularly useful, or characteristics of biological weapons, which is quite different from the approach and the sort of education we're encouraging. On the basis of this survey, we've actually begun a process of engagement with the life science community, and we're trying to develop teaching materials and background educational resources for the insertion of this biosecurity related education into life science degree courses. So it involves trying to develop materials for education through a dialogue with life science educators, largely through the determination of colleagues in Italy at LNCV. We've actually been able to get some test implementations using some of the lecture material developed here at Bradford in conjunction with our Italian colleagues. And we're actually trying to gauge reactions and responses to this sort of education in some test universities which we have. At the same time, in tandem with the European Focus project, we also have a project which has been involved a similar survey and a sort of engagement process with colleagues in Japan, and also as part of a Wellcome Trust bid, we're looking at a whole range of other sort of capacity building areas with relation to biosecurity education and dual use bioethics, specifically for the Wellcome Trust. Personally, my research at the moment is actually looking at other intervention points as well. So trying to look at the extent to which life science textbooks make reference to biosecurity, to bioethics, to dual use issues. One of the things you find is that life science textbooks, in as far as they actually exist, because the science moves so quickly that textbooks change, but in as far as these textbooks exist, there is sometimes some quite profound sort of social or ethical discussion, or alternatively lesson objectives dealing with characteristics of biological weapons, but very, very few mentions of the concerns of the security community, so dual use and biosecurity, and the role of arms control. So one of the things is to try and look at that intervention point to see how the sort of the dual use educational elements could be integrated within textbooks. Another area is to look at funders and the extent to which they oblige consideration of dual use considerations. And this is all part of a much broader project being conducted here at BDRC with colleagues in Japan and Italy to try and combine the theoretical with the applied. So we're coming from a very theoretical background in terms of looking at some of these concepts, but also we make no apology for being policy relevant on this, and actually moving forward to try and ensure or build enhanced awareness amongst the life science communities of these dangers in the 21st century.